What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we are checking out the brand new Samsung Galaxy A36 5G. Now, this is of course the mid-level device within Samsung's mid-range and budget lineup of smartphones, their very popular A series. Samsung also announced the new A56, which is the next step up, the A26, which is a step down, and there's even an A16 and A06, which I already have videos on. Much like with last year's A35, this new A36 is going to be widely available around the world, and here in the US, it's sold directly from Samsung and through countless carriers and prepaid networks. This really is the phone that Samsung would prefer you buy if you aren't going to get a new flagship S series or their FE. And to be honest, for 95% of people out there, this is a great phone with perfectly fine specs at a decent price. Now, there's a few new things with the A36 this year that I want to talk about, including a slight redesign, a more compact set of AI-adjacent software features, and improvements to the performance and charging. But first things first, let's go ahead and unbox it, and then I'll fill you in on everything you need to know about this new A36. Ripping off the couple of stickers there and sliding off the lid, the first thing you get in the box is the phone itself. And you might have noticed I did roll out the purple carpet for this phone because it's technically the Lavender colorway, but the actual holographic finish is a lot more blue than I was expecting. As always, nothing else inside the bottom half of the box, but stuck inside the lid, you do still get some accessories. The first of which is the SIM ejector tool. And then inside this cardboard packet, you'll find about 50 little sheets of paper, instructions, legal info, and I don't even know what else. I just kept pulling more and more out. I mean, sustainability who? This is like half a national forest worth of trees. Buried underneath all that is your USB-C cable, and that is the unboxing experience for the A36 this year. So we'll get this phone fully unwrapped here and powered on. And the first thing I want to just quickly touch on is pricing. The full retail price for the A36 is $399. Like I said, it is sold direct from Samsung, unlocked, and Samsung is running a special launch promotion right now, which includes elevated trade-in offers for some older phones and last year's A series devices, and some steep discounts on the Galaxy Buds FE and the Fit 3 and Watch FE with the purchase of this A36. I'll leave a link to Samsung's website down below in the video description if you want to check out that deal. But of course, this phone is also going to be sold through every carrier you can think of pretty much, and they'll have unique offers for new and existing customers as well. So basically, there's endless options here for you to not pay full price for this phone. Now, from the front, arguably this new A36 looks just about identical to any other Samsung smartphone released in the last 3 or 4 years. Size-wise, this is actually now a 6.7-inch smartphone. That's the screen size corner to corner at least. So a 1/10 of an inch more display compared to last year, thanks to slightly smaller bezels, a better screen to body ratio, and a marginal increase in overall body height and width, but just a fraction of a millimeter in every direction. Given how many Samsung and Android smartphones are this size, I can't imagine anyone is unfamiliar with this form factor now, but it is still a lot of screen for your dollar. Around back, the build and design of the A36 has changed quite a bit. So the back panel is now all glass. It's Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, in fact, which means it's that premium, high-end fit and finish that used to be reserved only for the flagships. The frame, though, is still plastic, but this was never an issue for me. It's plenty sturdy and it's always felt metal-like, so I can't even tell. This A36 is thinner than last year, which is interesting. It's almost a full millimeter slimmer, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is noticeable. And the other thing that's noticeable is the redesigned camera setup. There's still 3 lenses here, the same 3 lenses as last year, actually, but they've sort of morphed into one thanks to this oblong oval lens cover. Now, I'm not going to try and pop this off, but someone else might. And I will say that it does stand out a bit more in person. It looks more like a single black camera module versus 3 lenses and a border like the product images sort of show. So it feels even more prominent. And this A-series phone now no longer looks like the S-series phones. That, I think, was a big draw last year. This year, everyone is going to know you have some sort of different smartphone. I will also just say that when it comes to the color, I was expecting, well, lavender, a purple-ish. again, like the product images show. But this is a very blue phone with a rainbow holographic sheen that only sometimes looks very pale purple. If you don't like this, you can also choose from black, white, and lime green. Taking a quick look around at everything else, there's nothing on the left side. On the right, there's the same old power and volume buttons in their usual spots, a couple microphone holes up at the top, and at the bottom, the USB-C charging port is flanked by the primary loudspeaker and a physical SIM card tray. Emphasis on the SIM. You get dual physical SIM card support along with eSIM, but no micro SD card. There's technically a couple configuration options available for this phone, 128 or 256 gigabytes of storage and 6, 8, and 12 gigabytes of RAM, but unless you opt for an international version of this phone and search far and wide for one, I think most people will be relegated to 128 gigabytes of storage and 6 gigabytes of RAM. That's what Samsung sells in the US anyway. There's your selfie camera up front just below the secondary speaker, and around back, like you saw, the 3-camera setup. This phone does also have an in-display fingerprint sensor, which, to be totally honest, I was having a little bit of trouble with. I don't know if it was just because the phone was installing apps in the background or what, but it really needed a longer than average touch and hold to be recognized, so I'm gonna have to do a bit more testing there. And there's Face Unlock, which you can also use. Now, while Samsung did give you that tiny bit more screen real estate, like I explained earlier, the rest of the screen specs didn't change much. This display is once again a full HD 2340 by 1080 resolution Super AMOLED panel, packing in around 385 pixels per inch and offering you that fast and smooth 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate. Collectively, this is all you could probably ask for on a phone like this, and it's more than enough to deliver a great viewing experience for whatever it is you like to watch. It's generally the same setup as last year, but Samsung did bump up the brightness a tad to 1200 nits of user-controlled brightness and up to 1900 nits of peak auto brightness. That's even brighter than last year's A55, so it's an upgrade for sure, but it is still lower than any flagship. Coupled with the slim bezels and more modern design, the screen setup here does mimic what you might otherwise pay $800 or $900 for, and the difference in brightness or display hardware that might exist between this and something pricier, well, it's hard to tell with the naked eye. For the last few years, I would consistently say that this screen is the top reason to buy this phone, especially at its price point. And that's generally still true, but a few other specs and features have caught up now. Regardless, this is a display that you'll thoroughly enjoy, and I don't think Samsung could have made it much better anyway, at least not enough to be worthwhile, and besides, it is still better than the iPhone screen. To pair with that screen, Samsung continues to offer a dual stereo speaker setup on this phone. I don't think the speaker hardware has literally ever changed, but it sounds good enough, and here's a sound sample that I know you all hate, but I still want to include it anyway. So I feel like each year, Samsung rotates between different chip manufacturers, Qualcomm, MediaTek, their own Exynos. This year, they landed back on Qualcomm, and I can already hear the collective sigh of relief from all of you. This new A36 is powered by the Snapdragon 6 Gen 3 processor and Adreno 710 GPU. This is still a relatively new chipset released in just the fall of last year, but we haven't really seen it on a ton of other smartphones. So here are the Geekbench scores, fresh out of the box for this chip. Feel free to pause and compare to what you might have in your hand right now. My A36, like you saw earlier, also is the 8 gig RAM model, so keep that in mind as I flip through the apps here. A few other important things of note. Samsung is promising 6 years of OS and security updates, which is always appreciated. This phone is starting on Android 15 and One UI 7 out of the box, obviously, so fresh and new enough, especially if you've been plagued by those One UI delays on maybe an older device you still have. Bit of a bummer, I hear. The other thing about the A36, at least from Samsung's perspective, is AI, but don't grab your pitchforks just yet. While the S-series phones are littered with all things AI, and Samsung markets all those features as the upgrade on those phones, this A36 actually has just a handful of AI adjacent or intelligent features that are probably the most useful, all in all, and ones you would only come across when and if you need them. For right now, you basically get Circle to Search, which has since been updated to AI Select, Object Eraser and Edit Suggestions for photos, which is a fan favorite, custom photo filters, and Read Aloud, which I didn't even know was an intelligent feature. And that's it. That's the awesome intelligence that inspired the catchphrase for this phone. And to be totally honest, I am perfectly okay with this. I'm sure more intelligence or Galaxy AI features will be added to this phone in future software updates, but simplicity is okay. Just the essentials here for a more basic and user-friendly smartphone, which I would argue this is. However, it is still a darn good phone performance-wise, with enough oomph and power to tackle whatever you throw at it. It's not nearly the entry-level device of an A06 or A16. This is still a fast phone. It's just that right balance, being still price conscious and limiting the non-essential software and hardware features that very few average everyday customers use on a day-to-day basis. Also, powering this phone is a familiar 5,000 mAh battery. While that's nothing new, what is new is up to 45-watt wired charging speeds to get you from 0 to 100% in just over an hour or more than 60% in about 30 minutes, provided you supply your own fast charging brick yourself. But that's still the only way to juice up this lower tier phone since it still lacks wireless charging. Finally, as for the camera setup, I already sort of mentioned that the actual hardware, the lenses at least, don't seem to be any different from last year, even if the module itself has that new funky redesign. You still have here a 50 megapixel f1.8 aperture main lens, an 8 megapixel ultra wide at 123 degrees, and the 5 megapixel macro for up close shots. The selfie camera is a 12 megapixel lens instead of a 13, but I think Samsung just picks from the part bin on that each year. While the intelligence features, the filters, the object eraser, and edit suggestions are all nice software add-ons for the photos, there's really nothing else new with the shooting modes or functions. The zoom is still a bit shallow at just 10x. And the macro lens, I mean, how many times do you take pictures this close up? I know Samsung can't go all out with the cameras on this phone. They need to leave some reason to upgrade to the better devices, so I can't complain too much. And the pictures honestly are pretty great, at least the couple I shot quickly here just to test them out. It's been a few years since the camera setups on the A series phones were actually a reason not to get them, but in more recent releases, the camera setups are perfectly fine for folks who need to capture the casual stuff week in and week out, and who aren't making major motion films like Samsung and Apple might suggest on their flagship phones. Overall, I think that outside of the camera redesign, this new A36 is a fairly worthwhile upgrade. Maybe if you have last year's A35, but especially if you're 2 or 3 years behind release cycles now, which I feel like most people are. I truly don't think there's anything that's missing, lacking, or otherwise limited with the A36 this year, unless you really, really want AI stuff. And while I just don't love the extra long camera blob, it's a minor complaint for an otherwise great device that delivers a ton of value for the price. But what do you guys think about the new A36 5G? Is it a phone you're considering right now? If you have one, do you like it? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.